The Arizona Hispanic Chamber of Commerce would like to thank APS for its continued partnership and sponsorship of this event. Because of you, we are able to continue to provide critical resources and programming to our small business community.
Good morning, students.
Professor Ramona and I are going to be working on fractions today.
Oh, encuentra el país.
Down, couple sheep.
Excuse me.
Teachers are doing whatever it takes to connect with their students.
202.
And Cox is too, by connecting over 125,000 eligible students in need with low-cost internet.
Who wants to see it again?
With the Connect to Compete program from Cox.
Together, we're protecting what matters most. Our home, our community, our way of life, the people we care about, and the future we're building. Through technology, innovation, and commitment, we're safeguarding water today and planning for tomorrow, so we can all have the water we need for generations to come. Learn how to do your part at srpnet.com/water.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Eric Sperling with STN. Welcome to the 2020 Business Diversity Summit. This will be our virtual roundtable. Now, this is the 9th annual summit, and it's brought to you today by the Phoenix Minority Business Development Agency Business Center, the Arizona Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, our presenting sponsor, APS, our community partners, and other generous event sponsors, Cox Communications and Salt River Project. Now, the Chamber will be randomly selecting 100 lucky winners to receive a $20 DoorDash discount coupon for completing our event survey. Thank you so much to DoorDash, our food delivery sponsor for today. Now, the Chamber also wants to salute its Los Amigos corporate partners. Now, if you've attended this event in the past, you know this event brings together a wide range of business leaders and professionals committed to hiring in diversity and leading the way in providing goods and services to many of Arizona's largest companies. Although the MBDA and the AZHCC have redesigned the event this year, the goal remains the same: to encourage diversity and to continue to grow our economy one business at a time. All right, so why don't we get started? I'd like to kick things off by introducing Julie West. She is the Vice President of Supply Chain at Arizona Public Service, where she is responsible for the company's extensive supply chain, procurement, warehousing, and logistics functions.
For APS and many successful companies, diversity means having a workforce that is representative of our customer base. But more importantly, it's about building innovation and a questioning attitude. Supply chains that have diverse contractors gain an agile perspective on how the end product should be made. We also have better processes which enable us to have a stronger community and economy. This event is so key. Not only are we able to meet one another, but we're able to leverage and understand the broad capabilities that are here within this room. Today's session mirrors a lot of what we try to do in our supplier diversity program at APS. We have a training program where we bring together small, diverse, and women-owned businesses, and we have them network with each other, but we also provide training around how to build a business plan, how to work with utility companies, how to answer RFPs and do presentations, which really help these companies, not only with APS, but with other business adventures that they go on. APS is committed to sustainable energy in Arizona in the future, and we're really looking for companies to partner with us in this endeavor. Failure and success of small businesses very often come from the help that they get from the community around them. Who knows what company will be the next Amazon, Apple, or Microsoft? But what we do know is that those companies all started out as a small business also. In closing, I want to thank you for joining APS in this journey and commitment to diversity. I challenge every one of us to recommit to how we are going to reach out to other companies across Arizona and engage them, just like we are in small business diversity. If we work together, we can really have a significant impact. I want to thank you, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of your session today.
Thank you so much, Julie. And now I would like to introduce you to the president and CEO of the Arizona Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, who will share more with us about the history of the Business Diversity Summit, Monica Villalobos. Monica, thank you so much for joining us in studio today.
Thank you, Eric, for hosting us in your studio at Social Television Network for our 4th event in 60 days. Don't worry, though, we're not moving in. Thank you all for joining us here today. At the Arizona Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, we promised you that we would close strong this year despite the pandemic, and today we will not disappoint you. Shortly, you will share in a robust discussion by national thought leaders and subject matter experts in supplier diversity. In partnership with community leaders, we have collaborated for 9 years to highlight the importance of diverse vendors. The Associated Minority Contractors of Arizona, the American Indian, Asian, Black, and Chinese Chambers of Arizona have been with us in this effort since the beginning. Also sustaining us in this effort has been our title sponsor, APS. Back in 2012, the Phoenix MBDA Center, led by the brilliant Alika Kumar, who you will hear from shortly, operated by the Arizona Hispanic Chamber, launched the Business Diversity Summit to recognize minority-owned businesses. That was also the year that we learned about a national best practice called the $1 Billion Roundtable, made up of those companies that spend more than $1 billion every year with minority suppliers in the U.S. This movement has led to nearly 30 U.S.-based multinational companies inducted for their Tier 1 or direct spend. We borrowed this concept, with their blessing, of course, and extended it to Arizona, calling it the $1 Million Circle of Excellence, with a slightly lower threshold. It is just as important to support those companies committed to diversity in their supply chain as it is to lift up and help minority businesses scale. It is a hand-in-glove dynamic, and this is not just the right thing to do, it makes business sense. Procurement executives have seen the benefit of identifying and cultivating a greater number of qualified suppliers because that increases the competitiveness of the bidding process. It also reduces complacency that can lead to a company not getting the best value from its suppliers. That is a direct hit to your bottom line. In our 2012 Supplier Diversity Best Practices White Paper, an APS executive emphatically stated, if you don't have a qualified and certified diverse bidder pool, it doesn't matter how successful you are internally. Further, the increasingly diverse demographics of Arizona and the country as a whole means that diverse businesses support the livelihood of more and more families in our communities. Many companies see doing business with these enterprises as a crucial part of their strategies for helping to develop the economies of the communities they serve, which in turn increases the demand for their products. Doing so also provides an important linkage to the growing base of diverse consumers. APS has served as a bellwether in Arizona and now enjoys one of the largest spends, if not the largest, with minority vendors. So today, we are thrilled to see momentum in Arizona as we induct 22 companies into the $1 Million Circle of Excellence. Some of these companies have been with us since the beginning. Others are new as they have been developing their procurement practices with this goal in mind. These companies collectively represent nearly $1 billion in diverse spend and actively encourage their primes to work with minority vendors. We salute you for your efforts. We know it's not always easy. It takes time and scarce resources to invest in developing minority vendors, but we know you'll agree that it is worth it. You will learn more about these companies through our digital campaign rolling out next week. Thank you again for all you do. And now, back to you, Eric.
Thank you so much, Monica. And I do want to remind everybody we are live streaming right now, and I can look. We have a very large audience in the live stream. Feel free to use that comment section. Join the chat as we engage in our discussion today. Okay, next we're going to hear from the Phoenix MBDA Center's Executive Director, Alika Kumar. Alika?
Thank you, Eric, and thank you, Monica, for your kind words. It was over 51 years ago that the impact of minority businesses on the nation's economy was recognized with the creation of the Office of Minority Business Enterprise by President Nixon. Now known as the Minority Business Development Agency, MBDA is the only federal agency dedicated exclusively to growing minority business enterprises. The Phoenix MBDA Business Center, operated by the Arizona Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, is one of the many MBDA-funded centers across the country committed to helping minority-owned businesses scale up their businesses. We are really honored to have David J. Bird, the National Director of MBDA, on the roundtable panel here today. Normally, 8 million minority businesses are a job source to over 8.7 million workers, contributing over 1.4 trillion to the economic output. This year has been no ordinary year. The pandemic has revealed the cost of vulnerabilities caused by the economic disparities along racial lines. The Economic Policy Institute reports that persistent racial disparities in health status, access to healthcare, wealth, employment, wages, housing, income, and poverty contribute to greater susceptibility to the virus, both economically and physically. The pandemic has exacerbated the impact on people of color. CDC data shows a disproportionate COVID-19 impact on American Indian, Alaskan Native populations who are at the highest risk from the disease. As most of us know, even on a good day, minority-owned businesses and small businesses struggle with cash flow, access to capital, and access to opportunities. A recent survey found that only 12% of those who applied for aid from the Small Business Administration received the loan amount requested, and nearly 2/3 are still waiting for help. Already, unfortunately, 41% of Black-owned businesses and 32% of Latino businesses have shuttered, compared to 17% of white-owned businesses, according to the National Bureau of Economic Research. If we don't have policies to protect these businesses, the loss of the businesses will have deep, long-lasting impacts on the national economy. Racial disparities cost the U.S. almost $8 trillion in annual gross receipts, over 13 million in jobs, and 1.9 million minority businesses that could have been. While the economic realities for the small minority-owned businesses seems disheartening at present, we believe that together our efforts can create changes that will eventually make the difference that makes the difference. We are lucky to have an esteemed panel here today that are doing just that. Sharon Patterson, President and CEO of the $1 Billion Roundtable, is helping drive supplier diversity excellence by recognizing and celebrating corporations that achieve spending of at least $1 billion with minority and women-owned suppliers. Angeles Valenciano, Chief Executive Officer of the National Diversity Council, will share with us how NDC works to be both a resource and an advocate for the value of diversity and inclusion. Ron Busby, President and CEO of the U.S. Black Chambers, a former Arizonan now making a difference on a national level, is providing visionary leadership and advocacy in the realization of economic empowerment, developing and growing Black enterprises. Adrian Trimble, President and CEO of the National Supplier Diversity Council, is also working tirelessly to advance business opportunities for certified minority business enterprises and connecting them to corporate members. And finally, we will hear from Lorena Valencia, co-founder of Rebuzz.io, a minority entrepreneur who's been very successful in her own right, who will share strategies that helped her ride the economic hardships and grow her many businesses effectively. Thank you all so very much for participating in this very important conversation today. Thank you.
And Alika, thank you so much. All right, I now have the pleasure of introducing our panel discussion moderator, Lisa Urias. Mrs. Urias is a president and CEO of Urias Communications. As an advertising and public relations firm she founded back in 2006. She's an ASU alum. She has received numerous awards and serves on several boards, including the ACHCC's board. Welcome, Lisa. So excited for you to join us live today. And I understand you have a great panel joining us.
Thank you, Eric. I do have a robust panel for you today, and I'm very excited to be here. I appreciate you all joining us, and please welcome our panelists to today's discussion. I'm going to start by asking each one of them a question so that they can answer it pretty thoroughly in their subject matter expertise. So let's start our panel this morning with David. We'd like to go first to David Byrd. He is, again, the National Director of the Minority Business Development Agency in the U.S. Department of Commerce. Welcome to you, David.
Thank you so much. I'm very glad to be here.
Wonderful. So, David, we know that MBEs contribute $1.8 trillion to the U.S. economy right now. We know that we could do so much more if we had parity. Tell us about what you think corporations and government agencies might do to help move the needle on this. And are there supplier diversity policies and targets in federal governments, for example, that we might want to explore?
Well, first of all, you were coming in and out, so I hope I've gotten the gist of your question, and I hope I'm coming through very well. So I would say that if they're looking to do supplier diversity, I would say first of all they need to work with MBDA, because MBDA is a 51-year success story. When we started out in 1969, there were 332,000 minority-owned businesses in this country. Today, there are 11 million that represent 8 million employees that is worth, as you said, $1.8 trillion to the U.S. economy. If minority businesses didn't exist, they'd have to be invented. That's how valuable they are to the U.S. economy. And as I'm sure Ron Busby would agree with me when he says, is, in the famous words of Jack Kemp when he gave his commencement speech at Central State University in 1991, if we want to create more black employees, we have to create more black employers. So I would say to corporate America that they should be working with MBDA, and that they should be working with our 24 business centers around the country, our 4 export centers, our 4 manufacturing specialty centers, because those folks are working on the ground with MBEs and can identify those MBEs that can fulfill the mission or fulfill their requirement of what they're trying to do. We exceeded, in fiscal year 19, we helped minority-owned businesses get $3.1 billion in contracts, 70% of which were with the private sector. But that means that only 30% were with government contract, which leaves a huge ceiling for growth in the government sector. So for both private sector entities, if you're looking to increase supplier diversity, I would encourage them to work with MBDA and our national chambers of commerce who are on this panel with me.
So David, let's just talk a little bit more about the new incoming administration. I know you've worked with many. So are there targets that we might want to consider from a federal procurement opportunity?
Well, first of all, yes. So first of all, one of the things that minority businesses need to do is to get into the whole budget forecasting, because almost every year major agencies do put out documents about where they expect to expend their federal expenditures in terms of contracting. So minority businesses need to do that. Number 2, if you have never gone after a government contract, don't know how to, want to learn, MBDA has a federal procurement center that will teach you how to go after government contracts, put together your bid package, and win. So I would, those are two strategies right there. If you've never gone after a government contract anytime, come to us at MBDA. Go to our website, www.mbda.gov. Look at our Federal Procurement Center. Learn how to go after federal contracts, put your bid package together, and win.
Thank you, David. Next, I'm going to ask Sharon Patterson to join us. Good morning, Sharon. She is the president and CEO of the $1 Billion Roundtable. Sharon.
Good morning.
Good morning. Tell us what you see as the most important thing that service providers can do to increase supplier diversity. And tell us about the importance of that C-suite support, the executive level support for supplier diversities within corporations.
Well, thank you for that question because it aligns so perfectly with our vision and mission, which would be to drive supplier diversity excellence through best practice sharing and thought leadership, and to do it on a global basis and to do it in an excellent manner. So in trying to share that information, especially with corporate America, you say, well, what's the most important thing? Well, there are several things that are important. And we have developed those things through best practices that we revealed through our book. We shared that information from NMSDC and BDR to put that book together so that if anybody wanted to get more information, they could go on our website and find that. But to the point of your question, what are some of the important things that companies can do to increase supplier diversity? I'll start with policy development and top management support. So that leads into your second question of C-suite involvement. Within corporate America, nothing gets done unless it is blessed by the executive leadership. And for supplier diversity, it's no different. Unless executive leadership endorses it, makes it a part of the company's overall strategic directives, and bakes it into the goals of buyers and influencers, because that's important as well, this is not going to get done. It's not something that can get done on an island. It has to involve everybody within the company, and you have to do it through a plan. And so that's another part of one of our best practices. It's you have to develop a plan, and no different than anything else. If you don't have a plan, if you don't have measures around that plan, then it doesn't get done. So I'm trying to be specific with you as opposed to looking at it from a high level. The other thing is to just be able to communicate that plan throughout the organization. So now going forward, if you have a policy, you have support from executive management, you have a plan around it, and you have to communicate it throughout the organization.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. I'm sorry to interrupt. I think that's an important point, though, that you bring up, Sharon, because sometimes MBEs can get pegged into one little area of the company instead of moving toward other areas of the company. Such large organizations have many, many opportunities. Isn't that right?
Well, that's correct, because even though a buyer or some person within the organization may not buy something, they may influence something. And, we had a conversation yesterday just about at what point do you get involved in this whole process? And this is from a diverse supplier perspective. You need to develop the relationship because things get done in the planning process and R&D. And if people don't know about you within the organization or have confidence in how you do it, then, it doesn't get done. You don't get involved either. So again, that's going to my fourth point of developing relationships with diverse suppliers. And in that relationship, it's internal and external. It's identifying opportunities. That's part of the plan, the goal development. You have to know what kinds of opportunities are in the pipeline and before it even gets to the buyer's desk. That's what I'm trying to say here. So again, you have policy from the top down, bottom up. You have influencers that are involved in that process. You have to have a plan. You have to have internal, external communications. You have to identify the opportunities, whether it's low priority, high priority, when it's going to get done. So you really have to get involved in that strategic process. And this is a strategic initiative.
It is a serious commitment. It is absolutely a serious commitment, and we need to make sure that those C-suite executives are involved and engaged at every level. So Thank you, Sharon. I'm going to move now. Our next.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know what? As the
Sorry.
Well, I was just going to try to, end what I was going to say. There are other best practices that companies can be involved in to make sure their programs get advanced. And it's as you mature, you start doing other kinds of things like supplier development and like engaging outside, or always engaging outside resources such as MBDA and the Black Chamber and WeBank and other organizations and NMSDC. So you have to use your external resources.
Absolutely.
Again, I have 5 minutes. I can talk on and on and on, and I'll just end with that.
Thank you so much. Very, very insightful, Sharon. So thank you for that insight. We're going to turn now to Ron Busby. He is someone who is from Arizona or had been here for a while. Good morning, Ron. He is now the head of the U.S. Black Chamber of Commerce, and so it's a real pleasure to have Ron with us today. So, Ron, we know that more than 40% of all Black-owned businesses closed this year, and largely due to the pandemic. So what can local Black businesses be doing now, or what can we be doing as a nation to ensure that we have more sustainability of Black-owned businesses moving forward? And then let's talk a little bit about representation of MBEs in corporate supply chains and how efforts like Buy Black, that initiative, has helped.
Great question. And first off, I want to thank you guys for having me. As a former Phoenix resident, I ran the local Black Chamber of Commerce there in Phoenix, also was a business owner. So I want to give a shout out to all of the folk that I have partnered with over the years, including Alika Kumar, as well as Izzy Gonzalez, who ran the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and also sat on our board. As a former business owner, I understand the challenges that Black businesses face, and I also understand the role that corporate America plays as well as government agencies. I think part of the solution has got to be intentionality. We can no longer afford to have conversations that are broad brush in reference to how you fix any one particular community or challenge. And I talk specifically about diversity and inclusion. I think this is a time of America where we can really have conversations about Black-owned businesses, their challenges, the needs, as well as the solutions. As a former business owner, I understand that being counted, as we've been discussing, in this corporate goal of supply chain management can be a challenge for many corporations. We go to them all the time and say, hey, spend more money with Black firms. And most corporations understand the importance of that. They understand the return on the investment, but there are also challenges for them to be able to find us. Usually the answer is, well, Ron, we do more business with Black businesses, but there are two challenges. One, we can't find them, and two, they don't have the size and the scale. And so the U.S. Black Chamber has created the Buy Black platform, which will allow all Americans, corporate, federal government, as well as the citizens, to be able to find us and to be able to support us through the Buy Black platform, BYBLACK.US. Now, in reference to solutions, I think the other thing that needs to be definitely done from a new administration standpoint, as we've been discussing, is intentionality and transparency there as well. We need to understand, as Daryl stated earlier, about where the dollars are being spent, and it can't be, well, we have supplier diversity numbers that are being reached. I want to know how much of that is being spent with Hispanic companies, Black companies, Asian companies, so that we can really now start to have measurable metrics to be able to say, let's move a conversation forward that has intentionality about moving a community that was hit the hardest during this pandemic. And so for Black businesses, we are looking for support from the federal government, but most importantly from our corporate partners, they need to understand that the role that they play as well as the role that Black businesses play across the United States.
You know, Ron, you're bringing up a really important point, and some of that is about disclosing the spend, right? I mean, with the $1 billion roundtable, those corporations are disclosing the spend. On federal government levels, do we have that same kind of transparency, and is more of that needed so that we get an idea of where those dollars are going?
Well, we had the director from the National Business Development Agency on the call with us earlier, and that is one of the things that we make sure that we discuss all the time. In the previous administration, we know that the SBA's goal was 23% minority spend. And under that administration, we knew where those dollars were being held. That was under the Obama administration. Under the Trump administration, there was no disclosure, no transparency. So we don't know exactly where those dollars are being spent, but we know that they're not where they need to be, nor were they there during the last 4 years. But that is something that we're definitely pushing for under this next administration.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ron. And we'll probably do a little follow-up question soon. I'm going to turn now to Angeles Valenciano. She is the Chief Executive Officer of the National Diversity Council. Angeles, good morning.
Good morning, Lisa. Thank you for having me here.
Sure. Now, Angeles, we know that the National Diversity Council has been committed to educating organizations to learn and grow in their knowledge about the benefits of diversity. So tell us a little bit about these practices and what your organization encourages.
Well, thank you so much for the question. You know, yes, the National Diversity Council is the voice of diversity, of equity and inclusion for our country. And I work very closely with over 600 organizations, national, domestic, but also global organizations that, if you think about it, a handful of them only have established supplier diversity programs. So it's so important, and one of the reasons why I wanted to join you in this conversation today is not just to encourage our partner organizations to be more mindful and understanding of the value of creating strong supplier diversity programs. It is one thing to talk about diversity and inclusion. We also need to go into the conversation of equity that is so important. I think about these organizations and the opportunities that they have to benchmark with others that are so successful in already doing this. So one of my national partners is UPS, and UPS has had a very strong supplier diversity program since 1992. And I want to speak to that specifically because you do not need to reinvent the wheel. If you're thinking as an organization, what do I do? How do I start? Great resources from my colleagues that have shared today. But also there has to be a desire, right, from your organization to want to, and your company, to understand why you want to establish these practices. I think about also the resources that we are sharing and how important it is as we are attending these conferences that we provide those resources, but also the opportunities for capital investments as well as management education. That's something that we work very closely with our partner organizations. So if we think about inclusive procurement and how it also delivers, broader benefits to a society as a whole, we talk about generating economic opportunity for all of our communities, and we've talked about that. The U.S. Small Business Administration talks about how 8 million minority-owned companies are in the United States and have established. But we still see a lot of resistance, right, to the support of supplier diversity programs and how that money should be allocated. I want to focus on 3 that are very specific that I encounter whenever speaking to our partners around establishing these supplier diversity programs. And the first one is that diversity programs are still perceived to be reactive in most cases. And, organizations still think that they should be treated as something that is there, that it's nice to have, maybe a token department that needs to be established. But it's really not the reality of having someone at the seat of the procurement table and how that can also enhance influence into the buying decisions that organizations make.
Yeah, and just to stop you there, let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, Is there
Sure.
a way that your organization helps management understand the benefits that MBEs bring to the table?
There is, and one of those, and I'm so glad that Ron brought it up because it's so true. It's transparency and it's accountability. And so when we sit at the table with our senior leadership and our CEOs, and we talk about the opportunity of finding minority-owned vendors that are excellent, partnerships for their organizations, we provide the support of connecting them. And so we have a very strong supplier diversity buddy system that we have enhanced through the national coalition that helps organizations that do not have an established procurement or supplier diversity program understand the benefits of it. It's different if Angeles comes and speaks to a CEO about diversity, equity, and inclusion versus another CEO coming to the CEO of a partner organization or even a competing organization to say, hey, this is what we are doing, this is how we are doing it, and this is the value of doing it.
Right. So I'm going to get back to a couple of other questions soon, but I'd like to move now to Lorena Valencia. Good morning, Lorena.
Good morning.
So Lorena is a fellow MBE person, one of my colleagues who I have known for a long time and have a tremendous amount of respect for. And so, Lorena, you are a co-founder at Rebuzz, and as a diverse supplier yourself to many major corporations throughout the years, what do you recommend that corporations consider if they're truly committed to working with diverse suppliers?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me on this panel with such illustrious leaders. I happen to know many of them very well, and my respect to all of them. I think we've answered the question of the why very well, and I think my fellow colleagues have also talked about how a deliberate, standardized program and best practices is very important at the top level down. So I will take my time to talk about maybe some real actionable kind of tactile, mechanical things that were challenges in my growth as a small business and medium and so on, and talk about things that have that I think have changed. The first one always is financing, right? Diverse businesses always talk about how financing is a challenge. So, my experience with corporate America is that they're very bottom line driven. And I always say that's okay if we all had started the same starting line, but we didn't. And so that piece of development really has to come into play because there is no, there is no magic algorithm. We're not just going to, create diverse businesses at scale. We have to develop them. And so financing is always an issue. Accelerating receivables is, I think, the easiest thing that we can do. From a corporate standpoint, if a corporation, for example, were to say as part of their best practice of their program, anytime they onboard a new diverse business, maybe for the first 6 months, they get accelerated receivables or something like that. That will allow the business for a little growth capital, open up a little net margin, and so forth. So accelerating receivables.
We know how important that is as small businesses, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. The other thing is, I think Sharon mentioned this, is getting diverse business into the procurement conversation early. Many times OEMs, they're building something out 1, 2, 3 years ahead. And by the time that, small businesses and diverse businesses find out about them, even at the quoting stage, sometimes it's too late for you to align your business with what's required to meet those mandatory requirements. So getting them in early. And two more things. One of them is a very common corporate strategy is bundling, right? So corporations will bundle their quotes into these massive quantities that almost become prohibitive for smaller business to get into, right? So really looking at this from a different prism and saying, well, can we have some carve-outs where it makes sense? Maybe it's geographically or maybe by industry or something, but there has to be some low-hanging fruit because everyone is chasing that commoditization, that low price, and that becomes hard for diverse business to start. And then the last thing is I'm going to say is, corporations to be creative. And when I say creative, meaning, there are a lot of things that corporations have in terms of resources that they can either lend or lease to small and diverse businesses. For example, I say, in my industry, I was in the automotive industry, automotive companies have massive labs. And I had to go out and procure my lab testing independently, which was very, very expensive. However, if one of my customers would have lent me that in some way, that would have made a difference. Maybe it's getting creative and saying, hey, could corporations leverage their vendors and their supply base and extend those economies of scale to diverse businesses? So now maybe I don't have the big volume, but I'm getting the price of some volume. Could we piggyback off of other suppliers? So again, being creative is key and goes and points to that whole development piece. So those are some ideas that I would throw to corporations.
No, I think that's a really important point. I mean, just corporations need to think a little bit outside the box. They get maybe into their rhythms of doing the same things that they've been doing over and over again, but maybe consulting with businesses like yours or other MBEs that can help them understand the challenges that we face.
Right.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lorena. And our final panelist today is Adrian Trimble. And Adrian is the president and CEO of the National Minority Supplier Development Council. Good morning, Adrian.
Good morning. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful to have you. So, Adrian, the National Minority Supplier Development Council for years developed successful relationships between America's top corporations and supply chain partners. Can you share some best practices that can be implemented in communities across the nation to advance supplier diversity?
Sure. And again, thank you for the invitation to join this panel. Most of these folks are my partners in crime, as I call it, so it's good to be sharing the screen with them today.
Good.
What most folks don't realize is that NMSDC, number one, is a corporate member organization. It was actually started by chief procurement officers who wanted to increase their spend within their organizations. So our main intention is to work with those corporations to help enhance their supply chain inclusion process. And I'm not going to cover a lot of the best practices because Sharon and others have already mentioned that. NMSDC actually created the original 8 best practices for supplier diversity and inclusion, and the $1 Billion Roundtable has really partnered with us to expand that. One of the things I think is so important if we want to replicate success across the country is that there has to be an understanding that it comes from the top of the house. It has to come from top-down leadership so that corporations who are really serious about this have an intention for targets, goals, metrics to measure their progress. And I think Ron said it best. Where's the transparency? Where's the accountability so that we can understand what these companies are doing, both from a spending with diverse businesses, but also from a sourcing and opportunity perspective. Those are things that will help really elevate supplier diversity across the country. The second piece is, and I like what Angela said about making sure that it's part of a broader diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy. Some folks who may know my background know that I led Toyota's diversity and inclusion process for North America for a number of years. One of the things that helped make our supplier diversity process so successful is that it was integrated into the overall diversity strategy for the company so that it wasn't this standalone process. Even though it's led by the procurement team, there are procurement opportunities across the company, and those need to be also included as part of a broader strategy for sourcing, strategic sourcing, and buying for the company. The third piece I would mention is very similar to what Lorena said, and that is we do have to get our suppliers access to research and development activities much sooner versus later. We can't really help build their capacity and their capability if we don't understand what those sourcing opportunities down the road would be, which again goes back to that transparency that's so needed to ensure that we know what's coming down the pipeline and how do we help prepare our businesses to be able to either grow their own capacity and scale, look at joint ventures or strategic alliances with other minority-owned companies so that we can take away this myth that our businesses are not of size and scale to be able to go after these contracts, because we know the right preparation with access to capital, the right relationships, they can be positioned for those types of business opportunities and bringing those solutions. So we need that understanding of what's in the pipeline so that we can get them ready. So those are some of the things I think is really important. The last point that I would mention is to make sure that you have a second tier process in place. We want to ensure that there is inclusion throughout the supply chain. And many times we don't focus on the second tier because that's a great development pipeline for minority businesses and diverse businesses to get exposure and access to opportunities. We need to grow that throughout the supply chain. So again, once you set those targets or goals, it helps to drive that process through the supply chain for inclusion. I think that's another great best practice that we've seen that's really helped to amplify inclusion of diverse businesses across the country.
Thank you so much, Adrienne. So now I would just like to take each panelist and ask 30 seconds. Give us what you would suggest is the one thing in this critical moment that you think we should do as a country or as corporations to make sure that we advance minority business enterprises. So let's start from the top. David. Let me make sure I have him there. Sorry, David, you're on mute. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. I would say racism is bad for business, and corporate America is going to step up to the forefront. I believe they've already shown it. They're going to continue to show it in the aftermath of the unfortunate death of Mr. Floyd and the protests, that a large part of what we've talked about today, driving the agenda, will be done and solved by corporate America, because they will step up to the forefront because they will realize that racism is bad for business.
Thank you, David. Sharon? Everybody can take off mute now so we can just conclude this last portion. Thank you, Sharon.
That was 30 seconds right there. Getting off mute.
That's fine.
I would because we've gotten so much attention lately, and it's not the kind of attention that we necessarily welcome, but it's there. And everybody is on pause for whatever reason. I would like for people to take this executive level attention that we have and push this initiative down throughout the organization and encourage those people who actually do the buying to embrace this whole piece of diversity, supplier diversity, everything that can help and lift people up, because so many people have biases. We have our own biases, and to just kind of overlook those biases and do what is right, what is economically sound, and what is a strategic directive from all of us. So just increase those programs, install them where they need to be, and do the things to make sure that the spend increases across the board.
Thank you, Sharon. Let's go to Ron.
Perfect. I'll end with the statement since I only have 30 seconds. Over the last 4.5 years, we've heard a lot about making America great again. And at the U.S. Black Chamber, we say we want America to be great as well. But in order for there to be a great America, there must be a great Black America. In order for there to be a great Black America, there must be great Black businesses. And in order for there to be great Black businesses, we need partners from corporations to the federal government to American citizens. We all talk a lot about how we improve our communities. It starts and ends with individuals. And when they see the value of minority and particularly Black-owned firms, we can pick up the torch and do the rest, but it's got to be all hands on deck, especially during these periods of time.
Thank you, Ron. Love that. Angeles?
Thank you. And I speak to all of you as an immigrant to this wonderful country that has given me so much. We cannot unsee what we have witnessed in these past years, and my community has suffered greatly for that. We cannot unsee what we have witnessed, and we have all been standing witnesses of what that is. And so I think that this is a moment of truth, a moment to pivot our understanding of what equity, of what inclusion means. It is a moment to go into the understanding of our humanity, and in the love of that, I think it's so important. And then also, to all of us, this is a moment to step back a little bit and also understand that the calling for which we are here has to be broader than what we just think it is. Thank you for this opportunity.
All right, I'm going to have Lorena and Adrienne go very quickly, please.
I'll take my 30 seconds to just talk to the diverse business on the line and how we can grow as diverse businesses. The first thing I'd say is recognize that a lot of this conversation about going back to normal doesn't exist in business. There's never normal in business. Business is always changing and it's fluid. So I would say that businesses need to look at what alliances, joint ventures they can do now. Travel is restricted, so being able to service nationwide contracts and things like that become important. Shifts in President Biden's administration in terms of bring back America, buying things here is going to create a lot of opportunity here, and also taking your business, maybe if you're service oriented, from kind of analog to digital. So how is it that you can go, we went from a convenience economy to on demand, and now it's at my door. So, if you're stuck in that situation, you got to figure out how you digitize your experience and your delivery of that experience. So I think that it's important for diverse business to understand that there's been tectonic shifts, and we need to make sure that we stay in line with that and actually capitalize on it. If not, we're going to be left behind.
Adrienne, I'm going to give you just a few seconds if you don't mind, please.
No, it's fine. The only thing I will leave the audience with is to be intentional. We have the attention of corporate America right now. Let's not let this be a moment in time, but make sure it's a movement. Stay at the table and stay the course with us. We're your partners, and we're here to help you through with your supply chain inclusion.
Well, thank you so much to this incredibly beautiful panel discussion today. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did and learned a lot. And now I'd like to take it back to Eric.
Thank you, Lisa, and great job leading that panel. What a powerful discussion, the robust, informative discussion we just had. Again, this will be, you can share this after the live. It will be available to share on social media and on other digital platforms. While our virtual roundtable discussion has come to a close, the Business Diversity Summit will be hosting a small business showcase and matchmaking forum focused on technology. That will be on December 3rd, so please keep an eye out for that information. And as we close, please think about our future leaders. The ACHCC has a scholarship fund for Hispanic university students in Arizona, and we appreciate your generosity. So please look for our donate link in the YouTube chat box there. I know we've had a very engaged discussion in that chat box. And on behalf of the Arizona Hispanic Chamber, we want to thank you for joining us today. And thank you once again to our presenting sponsor, APS, our other event sponsors, and our Los Amigos partners. And please don't forget to complete the event survey for your chance to win a DoorDash $20 gift card. You will get that survey in a post-event email. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.